Hello, viewers. My name is Ram. I am the co-creator of Tech Research Online, and today we have Simon, who is the chief editor for Iris Tech News and Crypto Commonwealth. He is also a TEDx speaker and an internet influencer for technology and publishing industry. Simon, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. Good to talk.
Yes, so I know that you've already given a written interview to us last week, and I'm very thankful that you agreed to do a video interview with us. It helps the community and it helps the Tech Research Online platform. And to start with, I would like our viewers to know a little bit about your background. I'm sure anybody can Google you and find out, but then I would love to hear from you your background, and if you can just touch base on your early days as a beginner and your journey so far in brief, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, I guess to in a big picture way, it kind of went through three phases maybe, and so going to college, I did American studies. So like you, I was in the States, and I went to DC. So that's very just educational, simply to live and spend time in the US. There's a lot of good things and a lot of crazy things in the US, but I think if you spend time there, you actually have a more balanced appreciation that it's a big place, and there's a lot of, if we're in tech, then there's a lot of great things that have come out of the US, and therefore just maybe have a more balanced view on it. So after that, I did do a master's in development studies, so there was elements about green economics and environmental economics. But equally at that time, basically you either went to work for the World Bank or I wanted to maybe live in a few other countries. So I did TEFL. And so from doing teaching English as a foreign language, enabled me to work in Spain and Mexico, Central America, and then Africa. So that was great in that what you were doing was a good job, but it enabled you to see different places and get a better understanding of different cultures. And so it's the kind of thing, much like when you look back, you can join the dots. So, I mean, that was very useful. While I think it would be hard to do that for 30 years, but it certainly was a means to an end. From that, I went to Ireland, and we were keen to apply the environmental economics to have to do an environmental company, but in the 90s, there wasn't so much interest, or there wasn't an understanding of why that would be a useful thing to do. But there was a lot of funding. There were a lot of social issues in the cities, and so if you did community development, they didn't really mind what topics you covered as long as you were engaging with the community and helping people to understand the value of education and maybe going back to college. So we did that, and that enabled us to do environmental education. So that would be the second phase, and with that company, it's still going, but I spent about 10 years on that until the recession of 2008, and I felt that what I'd done was good and useful, but the skills were maybe a bit soft. And so from that, there was a lot of government retraining. And so I did a master's in software engineering, and they looked for people that hadn't necessarily been coders or developers, but if you passed the maths test and you did the aptitude test and they figured that you were a good fit, then you got brought in to do it. And so that suddenly took me to working for Ericsson, who obviously a very interesting multinational in the tech space.
Yes.
And I had time with that, and they were very code heavy while realizing the need to communicate with their clients, and I really wanted to be in the communication space. So then Irish Tech News kind of came along and grew and became a more logical place to be someone who's interested in the tech, but also in how you communicate it. And so with the TEFL, which is obviously how to communicate in English, and then with the environmental education, again, it was how to communicate. So the tech side has probably been about now maybe 9 years, 2011, but the bits before about communication. And Ericsson was good to work with very smart coders who weren't always the best at articulating what they did. And so this is the thing. I mean, there are jokes about, how do you look after developers? You treat them like mushrooms and you keep them in a dark room and throw pizza at them, So it shows that some founders are tech-heavy founders, but they still need to communicate and articulate the value of what they've built and why it's of use. So rather than the complicated problems they've solved, you need to be able to explain to potential customers how it helps them with their needs. And so so naturally, being in the media space, we get a lot of press releases sent to us, and therefore, on one hand, we follow stories based on interest, but equally, we'll push back if we feel that they're not really articulating why their product is interesting. So I
Right.
guess that's the journey of
Mhm.
30 years condensed down into 5 minutes.
Well, nice. Good to know that. And I so you said something that you did. You started learning engineering in 2008, right?
2013. Yeah, I went back to college for about 4 years. Yeah,
Yeah. How old were you when you did that?
far too old.
Yeah.
um, I have to think about that, but I would say maybe 40s. So in some
Okay.
ways, I mean, in some ways, the great thing about if you were to go into coding is that you can very quickly learn what's gone before, and coding languages now in
Mhm.
many ways are an evolution. So I mean, hello world obviously is the first line of code that prints out in any
Right.
language, and therefore I think they were smart to do the aptitude tests because they brought in a lot of people that were engineers, people that had done
Mhm.
astrophysics,
Mhm.
and therefore the migration into working in a tech environment, you can learn fast, and they figured that you could learn fast. I mean, we did a diploma and then we did a master's, so within 2 years you had people that previously had not worked in tech at all, but
Mhm.
but it's so learnable. Like say website HTML code. Once you get behind the back end, uh,
Mhm.
there are repeatable concepts. And obviously like different languages have different philosophies. Is it object orientated? Is it not? But it's all learnable. It's like learning a language. I say it's like learning a language, like a foreign language, but it's just another language in some ways.
Absolutely. And I would say coding is the modern day phonetics, the ABC of the world. Everybody should know the basics of coding. In fact,
Yeah.
I am not an engineer myself, when I dropped out of engineering. I was doing mechanical engineering. I dropped out in the second year of the degree. And, so I'm not very good at, coding, etc. But then my love for technology actually kept me in technology business since the time I started my career 14 years ago. I started as a sales guy, and but I was selling technology, right? And now both my companies today, Unbound B2B or YM Labs, are actually technology service provider, right? So although I may not understand I may not be able to code, but I understand technology very well and how it can help the humankind, and with the innovation and the evolution that we are seeing.
Yeah, look, I think it's important. I think this is a thing that you have the deep tech guys, and then you have the public, and you need people who are in between the two to
Yeah,
understand to some degree what can and can't be built within the timeframes, and
yeah.
equally to understand what the needs are of the people who want to engage with you. So
Mhm.
it shows that there's a horizon, and there's space on it
Mhm.
for various people at different levels.
Yes, I agree. And so you've seen the technology evolution, right? You've been there at the right time. So from the late 70s, the computer boom, to what we're seeing today, IoT, blockchain, and I see you have interest in blockchain as well with crypto, and
Hmm.
uh, and then AI. Do you think technology needs to consolidate a little bit before the new technologies come in? Because I see that the last 2 decades, the new technologies have been coming and being introduced, and then there are not, although there are great applications to it, right, but not everybody is able to follow. For example, I'll tell you, AI, like a smaller enterprise or a mid-sized enterprise wouldn't even imagine working on AI because it's way too expensive for them to do. Well, they can obviously use somebody else's AI and do it, but then again, it depends on how which what kind of a business the company is into. So what do you think about that? What's the future of technology, and do you think we need a consolidation of it?
Look, I mean, I think what's happening, and is already happening, is that, for example, it's completely conceivable that you could have AI as a service. You can have Alipay and Ant Financial are doing blockchain as a service,
Mhm.
so that like it's kind of a continuation of what we just discussed. That you may not know how to code the thing, but you know that something is possible to be coded, and you know the people to speak to, and
Correct.
and so we're at a situation where if we talk about Internet of Things, big
Mhm.
data, machine learning, AI, these things aren't. no longer work in isolation. But say with AlphaGo, the latter iterations of these programs
Mhm.
uh, are not beating the best Go playing. Used to be that they beat the best Go player. Now they beat the best Go playing machine, and they're not doing it based upon learning the rules of the game. The zero implies that they have zero knowledge. They're just being thrown at it and told, this is zero and this is one, and I want you to get from zero to one in whatever way you can. And that's why with the AlphaGo, it begins doing moves that humans wouldn't do, because it's the AI is drawing on the big data using machine learning. So
Yes.
therefore, these things are not in isolation, and there are several analysts that are looking at it to say that progress is happening faster. That used to be, the number of time it took to get to the first million users or the first billion users. TV, I don't know, it took 90 years, but
Yes.
there are new apps that if they're compelling enough, they hit the billion users in, used to be, like days, weeks or days now. So therefore, I think it's already happening. And this is a bit like, say, if you talk about Google Translate and people say, oh, it's rubbish. That statement is a statement in time, and then it would be a question of, well, when did you last use Google Translate, and what did it do the last time you used it,
Yeah.
rather than a year ago? And so you're saying, is it a consolidation? I think what's happening is that there's a lot more cross boundary. You look at what's worked well in other areas, and how can we bring in these insights for what we're doing? And this has happened across. Say with microchips, like that you move into ceramics and different things. And so
Yes.
similarly with technology, and this is a thing that to some degree, for better or worse, the problem is that sometimes the innovations are run ahead of and faster than us having considered the implications of it. And we have that with face recognition software, for
Yes.
example.
Yep.
So I don't, it's like you've let the genie out of the bottle, and I don't think we can say, right, I think we need to stop and have pause for reflection. And the things like the coronavirus show that
Mhm.
something's out there, it's in real time, and therefore we have to do the best we can. And that doesn't mean we're suddenly going to jump to an AI apocalypse, because
Right.
general AI intelligence is a very difficult, very different thing to having a machine that can beat you at Go. So
Right. Interesting, and thank you for sharing your thoughts around that. I'm sure a lot of IT professionals will concur with you on it. You spoke about coronavirus in between, right? How do you think the technology will come to rescue in this situation? It's not really that bad. It's very serious, right? But it's spreading very fast. One of the Harvard study that came in day for yesterday said if at the rate that coronavirus was spreading, it could reach to 74% of the population in 2020 alone. In 2020 alone, so that's interesting and that's scary, right? And you, how technology is helping in this situation? Any idea?
yeah, well, so I guess obviously you see all the flights that are virtually empty, and so many companies, many ones that are based in many countries, the Accentures, the Big Four, Apple and that, Google, are saying very much, well, maybe we don't need our people to physically be at events. And obviously, I mean, here we are, you're in India and I'm in Ireland, so we're still perfectly able to communicate.
Yes.
The internet, the web's not down,
Yeah.
and therefore, like, we're doing quite a few discussions and conversations with people about how this could very much accelerate certain trends in terms of remote working, distance working. You know, um, in many ways, particularly in IT, the quality of work should be based upon uh, a worker should be based upon the quality of their work and the timeliness of their work. The
Absolutely.
amount of time they spend sitting in the office really should be irrelevant and an abstract consideration. And in
100%.
these in this context, then uh, coronavirus could very well much be a push towards, and I can see that too, because many companies are opportunistically pitching us to say our technology is helping to provide solutions for coronavirus. So you can see that they're seeing a business opportunity in
Yeah.
this as well.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess if with that considered, I mean, so Harvard have told their students to pack up and go home within 5 days.
Yes.
Many Irish colleges are delivering the lectures online.
Right.
So a lot of the technology has actually been around to do this for 5 to 8 years, and like you're still learning, you're still engaging, but you're removing for now that interaction, that interface where people are getting infected. So
Mhm.
we have a lot of technological tools that enable a lot of aspects of work to still take place. So
Right.
in that way, you know, coronavirus could be an interesting prompt towards changing some behavioral patterns that could have that have been moving slower than they could have been.
Interesting. In fact, yeah, it will give push to a lot of larger enterprises to actually start looking at work from home as a permanent thing for a lot of employees. But then again, this is what we are talking about is people who work from office, who work from computer, right? You
Mm-hmm.
know, there are other industries which are getting affected, whether it's tourism or manufacturing or agriculture, where I was thinking about this, and I figured that had it been that RPA and robotics and IoT had more penetration or adoption across the world, just like office works can be taken care of, that could have been taken care of. I mean, do you think so, or what are your thoughts on that? Because they still suffer, right?
Yeah, look, I guess one aspect of the coronavirus is the illustration of how interconnected we are now. That regardless of your political philosophy, you know, China and the US, even if they choose to have trade wars, have a very deep integration between things going in and coming out. So, like you say, when the digital hits the physical and the cargo containers are in Chinese docks and they've arrived there and they're not being unloaded and put back on boats.
Yeah.
It, I guess it's a similar way to look at it is previously people might just consider you had an online profile and persona and an offline one, and then there was the discussion about how very much that blurs, that moves into one. You are both your online profile and also who you are in person, and the two are related. And I think coronavirus demonstrates that's also true in the physical world too, because so many supply chains are deeply integrated that the final product appears in one place, but it's been created by a series of product pieces from all over the place. So,
Right.
you know, I guess they say so. SARS was 2003, and coronavirus is 17 years later. So a lot's happened in 17 years, and
Right.
those are some of the elements that are slightly different now. So, but I guess the other thing, fortunately, is that the mortality rates for this are much lower than Ebola or SARS too. So, like you say, you could have 70% of the population having been infected by the end of the year, but
Mhm.
equally, if mortality rates are obviously it varies by age, but for many ages, if it's 2% and less, then you
Mhm.
could have a large number of people who've been through the process and come out the other end. And I think we're very fortunate that the fatality rates are relatively low compared to other diseases.
Absolutely. And then I'm pretty sure there are vaccines coming, and there are treatments that are coming very soon. And then this should be
Mm.
us. There's nothing that a human can't achieve. So it's a matter of time when we find this out. And my hopes are within days or weeks, not really months. um, Great. Just one last question, Simon, before I let you go. Now you're very successful in what you do. You changed careers. Especially I did one thing which I didn't know, that you went back to school. At the age of 40. So that's really motivating. That you could really start a new career whenever you want, and then be again successful in that space. What advice do you have for your younger self, and would you say the same thing for younger generation today?
Um, well, I mean, I guess having to go back to college was a consequence of the fact that there are very few jobs now that are jobs for life, and actually now you could even say there are probably very few careers that might be careers for life.
Yeah.
And there are also a lot of predictions that many of the jobs in 5 to 10 years time we don't currently have a job title for.
Yeah.
So I think in that way I mean, so on one hand, so I had 4 years in college at the normal age, 18 to 22, and then I had 4 years from whatever, 40
Yeah.
to 44 or something.
Yeah.
But you see, on the other hand, with things like YouTube and Moodle,
Mm.
it meant and in IT and programs especially, if they need to know something, they know that they go and look up a library, or you go to Stack Overflow, like, because no matter how good you are, whatever language you program in, there may be a new library or a new application to do something specific that you haven't done before. So therefore, and the best coders I worked with didn't know all the answers, but they knew how to go and look for the answers and where to go to try and find them. So
Right.
therefore, yeah, so therefore they had absorbed faster the whole lifelong learning concept.
Right.
That therefore, going back to college isn't. I think it'll be less a thing of going back to college and more this year. What do I need to know this year, this quarter, this month, today to enable me to do what I do?
Right.
And YouTube videos are good. Stack Overflow is good. So I think in some ways, most people, or those people that are really creative and innovative, are doing this all the time. It's just not called going back to college. It's just they have their networks to know how to learn and find the answers that they need.
Right. Absolutely. Well, great. Thank you so much for answering that for us. And, I'm sure the viewers are going to love this interview and all the insights that you gave them. Um, I would, I'm really thankful that you gave us your time, and I hope to do this again with you sometime in future when we have new questions or new topics which is relevant to what you're doing and what you're currently involved with. And I really wish you best of luck with 2020, and I hope to stay in touch with you, Simon.
Cool. Thank you very much for having me. Thanks. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Simon. Bye bye.